Mori was a young, scrappy orphan boy with a rough reputation taken in by an elderly man who raised him high up in the mountains. This old man, who trained him in a rare martial art called Renewal Taekwondo, finally told Mori it was time to head into the city, attend school, and make friends. Though Mori was heartbroken, he knew deep down that the old man simply wanted to buy milk and never planned to return. The scene cut to 3 men lounging on a beach, being pampered by massage therapists. One of them made a call to a government official named Park, questioning a bill sent to the National Assembly. While money was offered, these men were interested in more, and they discussed their scheme to tarnish the Prime Minister's reputation. As they talked, something dark loomed on the horizon. Suddenly, the wind whipped up and the once clear skies clouded over. The men were caught off guard when something massive dropped from the sky, crushing them instantly. In an office nearby, a man made a crushing motion with his hand, signaling to his secretary that time was running short. He bore a red cross tattoo on his hand, a mark later found imprinted on the island by investigators, in the shape of a giant handprint. We then meet Mori again, now a teenager, waking from a dream about his grandfather's departure. Looking at an old photo of the two, he quickly realized he was late for something important. With a sense of urgency, he dashed out on his bicycle, frustrated at having overslept on a big day. Later, the news announced the launch of a prestigious martial arts competition, the God of High School. Young martial artists from all over the country would be competing in regional preliminaries. The city was buzzing with excitement as students and fans scrambled for tickets. Meanwhile, a young man at a convenience store took out the trash and checked his wallet, realizing he needed more shifts to cover his expenses. At the same time, a girl trying to get directions to the tournament eagerly chatted with a few martial artists who hadn't made the cut. She couldn't help but admire their impressive physiques. Mori was also on his way to the tournament, starving and thinking about lunch, when he nearly collided with a thief on a motorcycle who had just stolen an elderly woman's purse. Seeing the distress in the woman's eyes, Mori turned his bike around to give chase. The pursuit was intense as Mori, on a bicycle, darted after the motorcycle riding thief. At one point, he bumped into the girl who had been admiring muscles earlier. Apologizing quickly, he continued after the thief, but not before she realized her glasses were broken and hurled her sword at him in frustration, shouting that he wouldn't get away. After Mori explained that he was after a thief, the girl, moved by his effort to help the elderly woman, joined him in the chase. Riding together on the bicycle, they kept up their pursuit. Just when it seemed the thief might escape, the girl leapt to attack, but missed, hitting a street sign instead. A boy from the convenience store then intervened, delivering a powerful punch to the thief, which amazed both Mori and the girl. In the next scene, the 3 teenagers Mori, the girl Yumira, and the boy Han Daiwi prepared for the tournament in the locker room. Mira demanded Mori pay for her glasses, but he insisted it was the thief's fault. After brief introductions, they geared up for the tournament. An announcer explained the rules. Any fighting style was allowed. There was no time limit, and any weapon could be used. To win, a fighter had to knock out their opponent or make them surrender. The participants wore bracelets that monitored their vitals and triggered nanomachines to heal them in case of serious injury. The announcer then revealed the grand prize, a single wish granted by the tournament organizers, and he said that the preliminary rounds would begin immediately in a battle royale format. Fighters soon noticed that the bracelets not only tracked their vitals, but also showed each other's skill levels, and the weaker ones quickly became targets. Mori demonstrated impressive strength, taking down multiple opponents, with Mira and Dawi also holding their own against many challengers. Then Kang Manok, a favored fighter, entered the ring. A blue-haired woman watching noted his reputation. Without even using his arms, he swiftly eliminated several fighters and expressed disappointment with the competition, commenting that he'd rather be back in his prison cell sleeping. Mira stepped up to challenge Kang, but struggled to land a damaging hit. Kang, amused, made inappropriate comments about her looks, suggesting a date, which she responded to with utter disdain. Meanwhile, Mori took the opportunity to pull a prank, pulling his pants down to reveal his animal print underwear, which momentarily stunned Kang. In response, Kang unleashed a powerful kick, sending Mori flying across the ring. Observing the impact, Dawi noticed that Mori had cleverly used his arm to injure Kang's foot. Mori got up and told Kang that if he was going all out, then Mori would do the same. The two launched at each other with full force, setting the stage for an epic showdown. Meanwhile, officials from the U.S. Government grew uneasy upon seeing footage of the island incident. As tension filled the room, a man with a scar on his forehead entered, causing everyone to raise their weapons in alarm. When questioned about his identity, he introduced himself as Park Moo-jin, representing the Korean government. With the tournament's first round concluded, Mori headed home, with Jin and Han following since their paths coincided. As they walked, Jin asked Mira why she'd hit him during the earlier match, prompting her to recall that in her attack on Kang, she had accidentally twisted Jin's neck. She apologized, explaining it was unintentional. She had mistaken him for someone else without her glasses on. Mira added that the nanomachines injected into all fighters had healed him immediately, leaving Han in awe of the tournament's advanced tech. Later, Jin shared that his reason for entering the tournament was to face strong opponents and grow stronger. Han revealed he was participating to earn money, while Mira explained her goal, which is to restore her family's martial arts academy. Jin playfully teased her about how often she loses her sword, to which she retorted that it's because she can't see well without her glasses. Jin slyly took her sword while she wasn't looking, and when she reached to grab it back, it slipped from her hands and fell into a nearby river. Apologizing, Jin offered to fetch it, but Mira, irritated, slapped him and told him to leave. That evening, Mira searched the river for her sword, recalling her father's words about preserving their moonlight sword style. A memory surfaced of her father, gifting her the sword, entrusting her to pass on the family legacy. While others enjoyed typical activities, Mira dedicated herself to training, striving to fulfill her father's wishes. As she searched in the dark, her phone's flashlight went out, leaving her stranded in the darkness. Jin arrived with a flashlight to help her look, and as they searched, she apologized for slapping him, explaining how important the sword was to her, as it was her father's last gift. Han soon appeared, lighting up the area with bright lights to assist in the search. The next morning, the second round of matches began, with the prize being a spot in the National God of High School tournament. Among the fighters introduced was Go Gamdo, who specialized in Taichi. In the locker room, Jin was asleep when Kang approached, threatening him even as he slept. Go intervened, warning Kang to back off, but Kang retaliated with a kick to Go's face. Jin awoke just in time to steady Go and advised him to always stay vigilant. In the first match, Mira swiftly knocked out Han Dae, setting off a series of fights. Jin easily won his match, and they watched the other contestants' bouts on TV, with Han emerging victorious as well, fueling Jin's eagerness to face them in future rounds. Soon after, Go approached Jin to thank him for standing up against Kang earlier. He admitted he should have been more alert, and just then, the announcer called the fighters for the next match, and Jin warned Go to stay cautious since his opponent would be Kang. Go, unshaken, replied that he wasn't afraid of Kang, but rather wary of losing his resolve. The announcer explained that the match would only end when one fighter surrendered or lost consciousness, and leaving the ring for over 20 seconds would mean disqualification. Fighters could rely on the nanomachines to heal injuries as they occurred. Go encouraged Kang to fight with honor, releasing his restraints and committing to the principles of a true martial artist. As the fight commenced, Go executed a series of clean, powerful strikes that stunned Kang, throwing him into the crowd and leaving the audience in awe. Kang, however, returned to the ring with little effect, unfazed by Go's attacks. Unleashing one of his arms, Kang launched a barrage of brutal attacks, relying on underhanded moves, such as eye gouges and low blows, designed for survival rather than honor. Despite the onslaught, Go, grounded in his philosophy of peaceful strength, landed a powerful move, the Yang balance strike, only for Kang to block it with ease. Kang demanded Go's surrender, forcing him to apologize while humiliating him with slaps and stepping on his face. Refusing to submit, Go endured Kang's punishment until Kang threatened to tear his arms off. At this point, Jin intervened, furious at Kang's tactics, and struck him. The tournament staff quickly surrounded Jin, informing him he was not allowed to interfere in others' fights. As Jin was led away, Kang staggered to his feet, claiming he had undergone a transformation. A dark aura surrounded him, and he removed his weighted pants. Flashbacks showed him, once a weak fighter, seeking mentorship only to be dismissed as a failure. Back in the present, Kang unleashed a devastating attack on Jin. The officials moved to step in, but Jin launched a series of rapid kicks, striking Kang until he was knocked out cold. At that moment, Park Moo-jin, the man with the scar, appeared and used his powers to subdue Jin, slamming him to the ground. Over the microphone, Park introduced himself as the tournament's chief administrator, declaring that Jin would face consequences for breaking the rules. Yet, as Jin was escorted out, he heard the crowd chanting his name in admiration. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit room, a group of people in religious robes listened intently to the tournament's events broadcast over the radio. One among them spoke of fulfilling God's will, believing that doing so would bring them their heart's deepest desires. Back at the arena, the organizers gathered. The blue-haired woman remarked that Go's severe injuries had resulted in his elimination. Meanwhile, Kang, visibly shaken by his encounter with Jin Mori, seemed unlikely to fight again, according to the woman's prediction. Later, Jin Mori was seen working out alone in his room as the organizers debated his potential disqualification. The scarred man reviewed Jin Mori's records and was stunned to discover that he was the grandson of Jin Taijin. As the next round began, Mira faced Mao, the reigning wrestling champion from the United States. Ma advised Mira to choose a different weapon as her wooden sword seemed inadequate. Ma launched a series of aggressive attacks, mentioning she'd come all the way from America to win the wish-granting prize. Mira struggled initially, her sword ineffective against Mao's iron-like strength. Taunted and cornered, Mira unleashed her moonlight sword style, delivering a powerful strike that left a deep wound on Mao's chest, securing Mira's victory. Meanwhile, Jin Mori celebrated Mira's win, only to be interrupted by Mujin, who announced the decision on his punishment. Mujin explained that Jin could re-enter the tournament if he defeated the green-haired man with glasses. Jin, however, stubbornly insisted on fighting the blonde man, recalling an old grudge from school. He threw a tantrum, only to have the green-haired man claim superiority and land a punch squarely on Jin's face. Excited, Jin realized he'd underestimated him. Mujin scheduled their match for the next day, and afterward, Jin joined Mira and Han, who were worried about his actions possibly leading to his disqualification. Han, though, marveled at Jin's incredible strength. Jin then informed them of his upcoming match and offered them energy-restoring fruits from Mujin. Mira chastised him for his recklessness, but Jin responded with a light-hearted saying from his family, urging them all to follow their instincts. It soon became clear that Mujin and the blue-haired woman had their own hidden motives. Later that night, Jin ate a peach at home, preparing to sleep when he was suddenly gripped by chest pain and began coughing up blood. In another room, Mujin explained that this was a test to assess if Jin possessed his grandfather's strength and resilience. Meanwhile, Han visited a friend hospitalized with a severe illness. It was revealed that Han was fighting in the tournament to raise money for his friend's treatment. The friend mentioned that doctors were trying an expensive new medication, and his sister had taken on extra work to help cover the costs. Feeling guilty for being a burden, Han's friend expressed gratitude for Han's support, and the two shared a light-hearted moment. Later, Han, working his side job as a trash collector, was taunted by bullies who mocked his friend's condition. Though they threw a can at him, Han quietly picked it up, undeterred by their jeers. Back at the arena, Han prepared to face his next opponent, a boy who constantly carried a book. This boy claimed to have learned all about fighting from reading, and he believed his bookish knowledge made him unbeatable. As the fight began, he demonstrated his familiarity with karate moves, easily predicting Han's action. He explained that his goal was to prove his theory that studying fighting patterns could make him invincible. Equipped with a metal bat, the boy swung at Han, who dodged skillfully. When the boy slipped and fell, Han chose not to take advantage, instead offering a hand to help him up. Surprised, the boy asked why, to which Han replied that attacking a downed opponent was cowardly. Recovering, the boy activated a move called 12 Spears, inflicting severe injuries on Han. He taunted Han, asserting that the blows had damaged his organs and bones, making it futile to continue fighting. However, Han remembered his friend's determination to survive in the hospital, giving him the resolve to stand up once again. The boy launched another assault with 72 spears, but Han countered with a series of moves called Black Tortoise and Vermilion Bird, creating a blinding whirlwind around the boy. Finally, he unleashed White Tiger, a powerful multi-strike attack, leaving the boy helpless and stunned as his theory collapsed. Unable to continue, the boy was eliminated from the tournament. Next, the fight between Jin Mori and the green-haired commissioner was announced, though Jin was unconscious at home. Suddenly, something awoke within him, and he hurried to the arena just in time. As he entered the ring, still exhausted, the commissioner taunted him, suggesting that Jin might have been too afraid to face him. The announcer laid out the conditions. If Jin could knock the commissioner down once, he would win the match. The fight began, and Jin moved with blinding speed, snatching the commissioner's glasses and toppling him in one swift move, ending the match before anyone could react. The announcer declared the match over, and the audience grumbled, disappointed by its abrupt conclusion. Infuriated, the commissioner rushed at Jin in a blind rage, but Jin deftly dodged and delivered a kick that sent him flying. The audience fell silent, taken aback by Jin's immense power. Suddenly, a monstrous entity emerged from the commissioner's body and attacked Jin, forcing him to evade its blows. The creature's strength was beyond anything seen before, and it attempted to impale Jin with a sword. But, to everyone's astonishment, something unseen stopped it, and the monster vanished. The other commissioners restrained the green-haired man, who was humiliated by Jin's prowess. Mujin then arrived and reprimanded him, docking his salary for 3 months due to his reckless behavior. Then, turning to Jin, Mujin congratulated him on his victory. Jin, feeling victorious yet hungry, requested a banana, leaving Mujin certain that he was indeed the grandson of Jin Taejin, the infamous tiger cub. A television broadcast featured the God of High School tournament, announcing that only 4 fighters remained after the preliminary rounds: Mori, a renewal taekwondo master; Mira, the heir to the Moonlight sword style; Han, a skilled full-contact karate fighter; and Baek, a Brazilian martial arts specialist. The next match would see Mira facing off against Han. Afterward, Mori, Mira, and Han strolled down the street, debating who might reach the final. Suddenly, a car pulled up, and a young man emerged, approached Mira, and, to everyone's shock, knelt before her, professing his love and asking her to marry him. The proposal left the 3 friends startled and embarrassed. In the following scene, Mira was with her young cousin, picking out a wedding dress. Her cousin, clearly baffled, expressed disbelief that Seongjin, a famous fighter and TV personality, wanted to marry Mira. Seongjin had declared his intention to support Mira and her martial arts ambitions, claiming he could help her and her sword reach new heights. A flashback then revisited Mira's childhood. After her father's passing, her uncle had taken her in, explaining that she would need to care for her father's sword. Although he attempted to carry on the family's martial arts tradition, his limited skill led to students abandoning the academy. Determined, Mira, even as a child, had firmly proclaimed herself the rightful heir to the sword, and vowed to honor her father's legacy. Later, her uncle questioned Seongjin about his true intentions, and Seongjin spoke of his own aspirations. He intended not only to help Mira, but to finally fulfill a dream that neither he nor Mira's father could realize on their own. Meanwhile, Mori, in line at a burger stand, overheard talk of Mira's engagement. Concerned, he decided to go to her house to ask why she was marrying Seongjin. He did just that, and when she asked how he had found her, Mori admitted he'd gotten her address from tournament organizers. Though Mira tried to shut the door, Mori blocked it, pressing her on why she would marry if she wasn't in love, especially with the semi-finals approaching. Mira explained that she felt obligated to marry for the sake of the sword and her Moonlight sword style, then closed the door, but she seemed conflicted. Mori, still concerned, called Han, who was delivering food, to share his suspicions about Mira's engagement. Han advised Mori to let it be, but Mori couldn't shake his feeling that something was wrong, pointing out that Mira didn't seem happy. Later, Mira appeared in a wedding dress, and her uncle watched with a strange sense of discomfort. He recalled how, as a young girl, Mira had never shown interest in typical hobbies or girlish activities, preferring instead to train, clean, or gaze silently at other girls' clothes in storefronts. Now, seeing her prepared to marry someone she didn't truly love unsettled him. Confronting Seongjin, her uncle urged him to cancel the wedding, saying Mira was too young and uninterested in marriage. Just then, Mira entered, claiming she was ready to marry Seongjin and insisting it was for the good of her father's legacy. Her cousin, who watched her speak so unlike herself, became visibly worried. Mira's cousin later confided in Mori about the family sword and the pressure Mira felt to uphold her father's legacy. Mori resolved to speak to Mira himself, but as he approached the wedding venue, guards blocked his path. Unfazed, he tried to push through, only to be thrown to the ground. Then a flashback revealed Seongjin's darker side. He belonged to a secret cult where the leader had instructed him to obtain both the sword and the hand that wields it, meaning Mira, as she alone could unlock its true power. The leader promised that with the sword, Seongjin could rise to godlike power. Back in the present, Mori struggled against the guards, careful not to use his martial skills on them as they posed no real threat. Suddenly, Han appeared, effortlessly pushing the guards aside, explaining to Mori that he wasn't hitting them, just moving them. Seong-jin observed the scene with visible disappointment in his guards. Mori interrupted the ceremony, prompting Seong-jin to angrily draw a sword handed to him by a servant and charge at Mori. But Han stepped in, catching the blade in his bare hand, giving Mori a moment to speak to Mira. Mori urged her to abandon the marriage, but Mira responded that she was simply fulfilling her father's wish to find a worthy successor for the sword. She explained that she had turned away many other suitors for being too weak. While explaining, she lashed out at Mori with a few swift punches, which Mori only blocked. Just then, her uncle tried to intervene, but Mira accidentally struck him, revealing her confusion and frustration. It was now clear to Mori, her uncle, and her cousin that Mira herself wasn't entirely convinced about the marriage. Mori gently told her to follow her own heart and instincts. Mira then recalled a childhood memory of her father, encouraging her to rely on her own understanding of the sword's power. In that moment, she realized she had misunderstood her father's words, as he had urged her to be independent, not bound by tradition. Turning back to Seong-jin, Mira announced that she would not marry him and would protect the moonlight sword style on her own. Outraged, Seong-jin revealed his true intentions, vowing to take both her and the sword by any means necessary. He then summoned a powerful deity, similar to the one the green-haired commissioner had conjured during Mori's previous fight. As the deity's massive form emerged, the building began to shake and collapse, and Han shouted for everyone to flee. Seong-jin attacked, injuring Mira as she stepped in to shield Han. But Mira quickly retaliated, using a moonlight sword technique to strike Seong-jin, knocking him unconscious. Mori and Han, both relieved, were glad to see Mira back in control of her destiny. Outside, they watched as the building burned in the aftermath. Mira, feeling guilty over the chaos, noticed Seong-jin escaping with the sword that belonged to Mira's family. She reassured herself that her father's legacy was within her, not within any physical weapon. Smiling, she walked away with her friends, her uncle and cousin, both relieved to see her joy restored. Not long after, Han experienced his own tragedy as his friend's health deteriorated at the hospital. Despite the doctor's efforts, they couldn't revive him. Heartbroken, Han later returned to work, where the usual bullies tried to mock him. But this time, Han defended his friend's honor, taking down all three with ease. Finally, the day of the tournament semi-finals arrived, and Han faced Mira in the ring. Consumed by anger and grief over his friend's death, Han fought with intense, almost uncontrollable rage. The audience was horrified as he continued his brutal attacks, ignoring the fact that Mira was severely injured and unconscious. The presenter had to intervene to prevent further harm, halting the match. As Han left, he told Mori that they would meet in the finals. Mori, watching Han's cold demeanor, sensed that his friend had changed in a way that felt almost unrecognizable. 2 years ago, Han remembered the days when he and his friend, before the illness, would spar every afternoon after school, strengthening their bond through friendly fights. This memory faded back to the present, where Han found himself in the bathroom, vomiting from the guilt of injuring Mira and the painful memories of his friend. Meanwhile, the other semi-final match commenced between Mori and Bayek, who utilized his unique Brazilian fighting style, but the fight concluded swiftly as Mori struck Bayek with a single powerful blow, showcasing his immense strength. The announcer then revealed the final matchup, Mori versus Han, the winner advancing to the national tournament. Mori later visited Mira in the hospital, where she was healing with the aid of advanced nanomachines. Mira noticed Mori's distraction and warned that he couldn't defeat Han with his current mindset. She admitted her own loss, attributing it to her weakness, but Mori insisted it was only because she had already been injured. Still, Mira expressed concern over Han's uncharacteristic aggression in their fight, wondering aloud what had driven him. That evening, Han visited his friend, who lay in a coma at the hospital. His friend's condition was deteriorating, casting a dark shadow over Han as he prepared for the tournament's final round the following day. As the final match began, Mujin, observing from the sidelines, wondered if the tiger cub within Mori would awaken. Mori and Han exchanged powerful blows, neither giving an inch. Han landed a heavy strike on Mori's mouth, causing him to spit blood. Echoing his anger for Mira's sake, Mori vowed not to forgive Han for hurting their friend and launched a flurry of kicks from his renewal Taekwondo style, forcing Han into the corner. However, instead of finishing him, Mori extended a hand to help him up. Han took his hand, but coldly informed Mori that neither he nor Mira were his friends, then proceeded to unleash a series of vicious techniques on Mori. Meanwhile, Mira was being discharged from the hospital and walked past Han's friend's room, where she noticed a gathering that included tournament organizers and a girl mourning her brother's recent death. The sister's grief turned to desperate anger as she screamed at her deceased brother to rise, believing he would want to fight Han one last time. A flashback then revealed a deal Han had made with the scarred tournament official. Understanding Han's desire to help his friend, the official promised that if Han won his matches with an overwhelming display of strength, they would save his friend with nanomachines. This was why Han had fought so ruthlessly against Mira, and now faced Mori with the same relentless intensity. Back in the present, Han unleashed his God stance, striking Mori with unyielding force. Mori fell hard to the ground, and the announcer began a 10 count. Before the count finished, the scarred official interrupted, bluntly telling Han that his friend had just died. The harsh announcement struck Han, while Mori, regaining his strength, rose before the final count. A memory surfaced from Han's high school days. Known for winning fights even against older students, he once found himself outnumbered by attackers wielding sticks. Just when the situation seemed grim, his future best friend had come to his aid. After their victory, they laid exhausted on the ground, the friend questioning why none of Han's supposed friends had come to help. Han's answer was simple and disillusioned. They weren't truly his friends. His friend then encouraged him to trust people more deeply, sharing a valuable lesson. Back in the present, Han, struggling to remain conscious, faced the grim reality of his friend's passing. Mori launched a fierce attack, but Han defended himself almost mechanically, his spirit drained. Another flashback emerged, showing the scarred official explaining to Han that, despite the nanomachine treatment, his friend's condition had progressed too far, nullifying their deal and releasing Han from his contract. In the middle of the fight, Han's mind drifted to the hollow statement he had just made to Mori, claiming they weren't friends. His friend's words about learning to trust echoed in his mind, reminding him of the loyalty he once cherished. Mori's attacks rained down, yet Han chose not to defend himself, feeling the full weight of his emotional loss. As Mori's relentless punches landed, Mira, now watching from the sidelines, urged Han to fight back like he had in their match. She handed him a letter from his friend, instructing him not to share its contents with Mori as it could alter the match's spirit. Holding the letter, Han recalled the day his friend wrote it, just before his health took a turn for the worse. The letter's message was filled with warmth, expressing his happiness and encouraging Han to fight not for others, but for himself. Emboldened by his friend's words, Han shifted his focus, throwing himself fully into the match against Mori. Both fighters unleashed their best techniques, fighting fiercely, but with newfound contentment. Mori executed a powerful blue dragon kick, sending Han tumbling to the ground. The announcer's voice rang out, declaring Jin Mori as the victor of the tournament. As Han lay on the ground, another memory surfaced, a light-hearted fight he'd won against his friend. Afterward, his friend suggested they share a smile, but Han, ever the stoic, replied that smiling didn't win fights. His friend had laughed, promising that one day they'd be best friends. Back in the present, Mori extended his hand to Han, whose gaze softened as he saw the same friendly smile he'd once associated with his late friend. The two shook hands, and Mori declared that they were friends. Mira joined, helping Han to his feet, announcing with a grin that she planned to beat him in their next match. The three of them left the ring together as the crowd erupted in applause, celebrating not only Mori's victory, but the bond of friendship that had been restored. The scene then shifts to Jin Mori's grandfather, deep within a secluded forest, when a group of robed men from a mysterious cult appears before him. One of the robed figures steps forward and urges Taijin to join their cause, claiming their group has been granted divine power. Taijin, however, dismisses them outright, insisting on living life by his own rules, a lesson he often pressed upon his grandson. Offended by Taijin's defiance, the man's expression darkens, hinting at the use of some hidden power or manipulation on him. Meanwhile, Mori lies in bed, contemplating his grandfather's disappearance, a figure he hasn't seen since childhood. Just then, a broadcast announces the upcoming national tournament, which is set to begin in 2 weeks. To compete, the top 3 fighters from each regional tournament must form teams. To secure third place, Mira faces the Brazilian fighter and decisively wins. Mori, watching from the audience, cheers wildly, though Mira and Han can't help but feel a little embarrassed by his enthusiasm. At the tournament headquarters, the administrators analyze the fighters' potential, aware that each of them could possess key-like traits that might unlock powerful latent abilities. They introduce a new rule to safeguard this key, as they believe that a fighter's strongest emotions might trigger the awakening of these hidden powers. However, they also express growing concern over the cult's recent bold actions and their pursuit of similar objectives. After the announcement, Mori enthusiastically congratulates Mira on her win, thrilled that the three of them will compete together in the big tournament. As they walk down the street, Mori's excitement builds at the thought of entering the competition as a team with his friends. Yet, he suddenly realizes that a team tournament means he won't be able to fight against Han or Mira. Mira chuckles, questioning why he'd want to fight his friends, to which Mori replies that becoming the strongest is super cool. Just then, Mori senses a presence nearby, but before he can react, the person vanishes, leaving him puzzled. Later, an elderly man, dispatched by the scarred tournament administrator, watches Mori from afar. This man is a master, one of 6, who are summoned by special cards, and it's revealed that he once taught Mujin. He sees great promise in Mori, who has survived consuming the potent sage fruit, and resolves to take on Mori as a pupil. Meanwhile, the story shifts back to Taijin, Mori's grandfather, who now faces the cultists alone. The men summon a godlike entity, opening a portal in the sky from which a massive sword emerges. It descends toward Taijin, leveling the forest in a display of apocalyptic destruction, and the cult members believe they are witnessing the onset of the end times. Elsewhere, Mira begins to reflect on her place in the team, feeling like she's just an extra. Later, she encounters the tournament's announcer at a store, where he's with his family. She notices he is blind, and he congratulates her on her recent victory. She acknowledges her win, but he cautions her that the real tournament is only just beginning. He urges Mira to fully harness the power of her moonlight sword style, explaining that without channeling her emotions into the sword, her efforts will be futile. Surprisingly, he confides that he lost his sight due to the very power of the moonlight sword. As the announcer heads to his car, he detects a foul stench nearby and realizes it's coming from a Nox cult member lurking in the shadows. Meanwhile, Han speaks with Mujin, who questions whether Han still wants to compete after the death of his friend, hinting that he could withdraw if he chose. Han asserts that he's committed to winning the tournament, as it's what his friend would have wanted, and admits he's also curious about the tournament's hidden powers, especially the strange godlike entity that emerged from the green-haired commissioner in Mori's earlier match. The mention of this mysterious power catches the attention of Mujin, who turns to a wall adorned with images of gods and symbols. Back in his training, Mori is set on building muscle to surprise Han and Mira, though his regimen includes some unusual exercises like chasing after a stray cat and climbing a tree to retrieve a balloon for some children. Unfortunately, the branch breaks, and Mori falls, twisting his ankle. Just then, the elderly man who had been watching him appears and, with a well-placed needle, relieves Mori's pain. The scarred administrator then introduces the concept of Chariok, the ability to draw power from gods, allowing users to wield godlike strength in battle. This ability defies typical human comprehension, and those who possess it are considered Chariok users. Later, Mira and Han visit Mori's home. When Mori asks how they found it, Mira teasingly repeats his response from when he visited her place, enjoying the irony. Inside, they find Mori's living space cluttered and untidy. Mori explains that he used to live in the mountains with his grandfather, but moved to the city to attend school. The friends share insights they've gathered, discussing Chariok and Mori's newfound ability to heal, which he demonstrates by relieving Mira's shoulder pain. They realize they'll need to stay vigilant, as many fighters in the tournament have now begun tapping into godly powers. We then see that the national tournament is on the horizon, featuring teams from 9 regions, with each team composed of 3 top fighters. In total, 27 fighters will compete for a chance to wield the power of a god, a reward that promises to grant any wish. Mira then notices that the tournament's presenter has been replaced by someone unfamiliar. A breaking news report soon reveals the reason: the previous presenter was found brutally murdered in a park. The shocking news sends waves of fear through the tournament's audience and participants. Soon after, a figure is seen elsewhere, boasting about his crime and openly reveling in the terror he's caused. He smugly reveals being the peasant responsible for killing the green-haired commissioner with glasses, one of the strongest in the tournament, and seems to take pleasure in the chaos he's unleashed. The tournament presenter announces the rules for the upcoming matches. Each team will compete in 3 battles, and the team that wins 2 out of the 3 will advance. Mori eagerly steps forward for the first match, but Mira cautions him to stay alert, reminding him of the opposing team's formidable reputation. Unfazed, Mori confidently shares that he's learned a new technique, part of Taejin's Taekwondo, which he believes will amplify his power. As the battle begins, Mori taps various points on his body, claiming it will unleash hidden strength. In the audience, the elderly master who taught Mori this skill watches with pride. But things go awry when Mori realizes he pressed the wrong points, causing him to freeze. Seizing the opportunity, his opponent lands a series of strong kicks, easily defeating Mori and securing the first win for their team. The second match sees Han facing Peng Wanguang, the largest competitor in the tournament. The presenter mentions that Peng Wang is the oldest participant at 38, shocking the audience, who hadn't expected such an age disparity. Meanwhile, in another scene, the assassin responsible for killing the green-haired commissioner and the tournament presenter gloats over his easy victory. However, it's revealed that Q, the green-haired man, has miraculously survived his injuries. Q summons his Chariok, a godly power that severs the assassin's arm in one swift motion. Back in the tournament, Han and Peng Wanguang are locked in a fierce exchange. Han lands multiple hard-hitting punches, which visibly shake Peng Wang, worrying his younger sister, Zhang. Watching from the sidelines, she flashes back to their difficult past, recalling the struggles they endured to make it to this tournament. She reassures herself, knowing Peng Wang's resolve. A flashback shows Peng Wanguang's days as a construction worker, where he was ridiculed by his co-workers for repeatedly failing his high school entrance exams. His sister, Zhang, would visit him with study materials, gently encouraging him. Despite the mockery and setbacks, Peng Wang's resilience remained unwavering. Meanwhile, Zhang, dealing with her own struggles, once threw her fencing sword against a wall after a disappointing loss. Peng Wang approached her with understanding, revealing that he too had failed many times but refused to quit, urging her to keep going if she truly wanted success. The scene returns to the present as Han lands a powerful blow, sending Peng Wang reeling into the corner. In a determined voice, Peng Wang declares that his dream is to help students who struggle, just as he did, by creating opportunities for them to study. Calling upon his Chariok, he summons Thor's hammer and charges at Han. With fierce determination, Han counters the attack with his Blue Dragon technique, shattering the hammer and knocking Peng Wang to the ground. Han emerges victorious, tying the score. Meanwhile, the battle between Q and the assassin escalates as Q slices off the assassin's other arm. The assassin, however, boasts of his ability to regenerate indefinitely. Undeterred, Q summons his power, launching a series of cards that immobilize his enemy. Just as he prepares to land a finishing blow, two priests from the cult arrive, Axley, a boy, and Saturn, a girl, each wielding strange and deadly powers. Realizing the situation has become dangerous, the white-haired organizer, sensing Q's Chariok, joins him, prepared to fight off the new threat. Back in the tournament arena, the final match between Mira and Zhang will determine which team advances. Both fighters initially wield sticks, but Zhang quickly senses that Mira's skill surpasses hers. Peng Wang fervently cheers for his sister, urging her not to give up. Drawing upon her Chariok, Zhang conjures a bright yellow energy sword, attacking Mira with renewed vigor. However, Mira remembers the advice from the blind presenter and channels her emotions fully into her moonlight sword style. With a swift kick, she shatters Zhang's sword, winning the match and securing her team's victory. Returning to the fight with Q, he and the white-haired organizer manage to subdue Exi and Saturn. But before they can finish the job, Exi grabs Saturn and they make a hasty retreat. Meanwhile, the assassin's body begins to swell grotesquely, culminating in a massive explosion that engulfs the entire apartment complex, cutting off power. Kui and the organizer survive the blast, though visibly shaken. In the aftermath of the tournament victory, Mori and Mira celebrate their win, while Han reflects on the brutal moment when he injured Mira during their previous match. Guilt-ridden, he silently vows never to harm a friend that way again. Nearby, Zhang regains consciousness, and Peng Wang comforts her, reassuring her that they'll have another chance next year. In the next round, a green-haired fighter named Jean Jugok enters the ring, wielding Chariok powers that manifest as fire and musical notes. His opponent, Jigal Taek, summons a monstrous shark, which attacks with savage ferocity, leaving Jugok bleeding heavily. Horrified, a girl from Jugok's team tries to intervene, but Jigal brutally kicks her to the ground, shocking the audience. Mira, seeing Mori's distress, warns him not to interfere, fearing he'll be disqualified, but this time, Han steps in to face Jigal, with the announcer quickly stepping between them to keep the peace. Despite his injuries, Jean Jugok rises, determined to fight for his family's honor and legacy. He channels fire and lightning, but Jigal's shark easily overpowers him. In one last devastating attack, Jigal summons the shark again, which overwhelms Jok, resulting in him getting eaten. In the emergency room, doctors tend to the severely injured boy, while Park Mujin, the scarred tournament administrator, contemplates the situation. An elderly advisor suggests disqualifying Jigal, noting that his reckless behavior and chaotic tactics pose a threat to the tournament's integrity. But Park hints that Jigal might hold the key they've been seeking, leaving the advisor unsettled. Meanwhile, Jin Mori, Mira, and Han sit among the audience, watching the ongoing matches. As they discuss upcoming opponents, Han reflects on his suspension from the tournament due to his previous intervention. Mori's attention, however, is captured by Park Ilpyo, a skilled fighter who wins his match effortlessly with a single powerful kick. The tiger emblem on Ilpyo's hoodie reminds Mori of his grandfather's military insignia, stirring up memories of the lessons Taijin imparted to him. As they walk down the street, Han talks about the importance of mastering Charyok, the ability to draw power from a god. A flashback shows Park explaining to Mori that many fighters dedicate years to developing Charyok, though some acquire it more easily, driven by personal inspiration. Mori, however, tells his friends that he wants to rely on his own strength rather than the powers of gods. His unusually somber tone concerns Mira, who notices Mori seems quieter than usual, weighed down by something deeper. Mori's mind drifts back to a recent conversation with Park and a blue-haired girl, where he was told about an attack on his grandfather in the mountains, leaving behind only traces of blood. Park had expressed doubt about Taijin's survival, but Mori's confidence in his grandfather's strength left him unshaken. Returning to the present, Mori sits in reflective silence, unwilling to believe his grandfather has been killed. Just then, Park Ilpyo approaches him with a friendly eagerness. They exchange light-hearted punches, resulting in a draw, and Ilpyo apologizes for his enthusiasm, helping Mori to his feet. During their conversation, Ilpyo admits he's been following Mori's progress since the preliminaries, inspired by his fighting style. Intrigued by the tiger symbol on Ilpyo's hoodie, Mori asks about its significance, and Ilpyo reveals it's a tribute to Mori's grandfather, Jin Taijin. He shares a personal story from his childhood. After his father's death, he was abandoned by his mother and placed in a martial arts academy where he often felt alone. One day, Taijin visited the academy, a young Mori asleep in his arms, and introduced himself as a friend of Ilpyo's grandfather. Taijin left Ilpyo with a book on Taekwondo techniques that his own grandfather had studied and urged him to become a great fighter. Ilpyo recalls the powerful impact Taijin's visit had on him, especially the tiger symbol on his uniform, which became a source of motivation. Their conversation is interrupted when Ilpyo senses an attack aimed at Mori. Reacting quickly, he intercepts Jigal's shark-shaped energy attack, a Charyok-powered Jigal had sent toward Mori. Standing his ground, Ilpyo confronts Jigal and warns him not to harm innocent people. A flashback reveals Ilpyo had previously landed a powerful blow on Jigal in a past confrontation, leaving a strong impression. Jigal withdraws, but Ilpyo cautions Mori about the threat Jigal poses, and Mori realizes he couldn't have stopped the attack on his own, feeling grateful for Ilpyo's help. Later, Mori resumes his training with renewed vigor, determined to become stronger. Meanwhile, QE, the green-haired commissioner who survived his assassination attempt, barges into Park's office, demanding an explanation for allowing the family of the deceased tournament presenter to be killed. In response, Park reprimands Q, reminding him of the collateral damage he caused during their fight and docking 9 months of his salary as a consequence. Later, on a rooftop, the blue-haired girl explains to Q that she faked the presenter's family's deaths, creating a decoy while relocating the real wife and daughter to safety. Elsewhere, Q retrieves a coin lodged under a soda machine and is observed by Han, who works nearby. Han approaches and proposes a deal. He wants Q to teach him how to use Charyok, and in exchange, he'll make lunch for Q every day, helping him save on food expenses. Han's motivation is simple. He wants to grow stronger than Mori, to be someone Mori can rely on in his struggles. Afterwards, as Park Mujin meets with the tournament organizers, he warns them of a dangerous religious cult known as Nox, which has set its sights on disrupting the tournament. He orders the organizers to eliminate any Nox members they encounter. Meanwhile, The Nox cult members gather in secret, and their leader declares open war on the tournament's organizers, promising to annihilate anyone who stands in their way. In a quiet moment, Mori reflects on his 17th birthday, marking yet another year without his grandfather. He recalls how, as a child, Taijin left him behind to confront powerful foes alone, an experience that taught Mori both resilience and independence. To his surprise, Mira and Han arrive, bearing food and cheerful birthday wishes. Together, they spend the evening laughing, eating, and playing games, making a pact to win the tournament, even though Han's suspension prevents him from participating in the next rounds. The following morning, Mori finds an envelope slipped under his door. Inside, he discovers a map and a photograph of his grandfather, bound in chains. Alarmed, he realizes this is more than a simple message, and his grandfather has been abducted. Jin Mori then speeds through the streets on his bicycle, racing against time to save his grandfather. In his mind, he apologizes to Mira and Han, silently promising to return in time for their tournament match. Meanwhile, the quarterfinals are already underway, with a showdown between Seoul and Jeju, two teams unexpectedly seeded into the tournament at the last minute. Mira and Han search for Mori, but he's nowhere to be found. A woman with blue hair appears, informing them that the match is about to start and urging them to return to the stadium. She warns that if Mori doesn't arrive in time for his match, he'll be disqualified, which would eliminate their team entirely. Later, as Han is disqualified from competing, Mira finds herself standing alone in the ring. She resolves to buy as much time as she can, hoping Mori will return soon. Her opponent arrives, a team dressed in dark robes that immediately raises suspicion of their possible connection to the Nox organization. The fighter Mira is set to face, removes his robe, revealing a powerful physique and a wooden sword, one that bears a shocking resemblance to the weapon her father once wielded. The sight of it fills her with a mix of dread and determination as she prepares for the challenging battle. The match begins, and after a few exchanges, Mira's wooden sword shatters. Her opponent reveals a weapon known as Fengxian, a national treasure with incredible power. He taunts her, mocking her for never realizing the true nature of her sword despite years of training. Mira fights on, managing to momentarily disarm her opponent. But when she grabs for the sword, it mysteriously vanishes from her grip and reappears in his hand. With a smug smile, her opponent explains that the sword recognizes its true master and now considers him its rightful owner. Meanwhile, Mori arrives at a remote location where he believes his grandfather is being held, only to be met with a horrific scene. He finds a man posing as his grandfather, but something is grotesquely off. As the imposter's head twists and inflates unnaturally, it triggers a violent explosion that shatters the surrounding area. A mysterious man appears from the shadows, explaining that he aims to eliminate the strongest tournament fighters to reach the key. Mori readies himself for battle, but the man suddenly splits into numerous identical clones, each one ready to attack. Back at the tournament, Mira struggles against her brutal opponent, who relentlessly taunts her and delivers one punishing blow after another. Searching for Mori, Han wanders through the stadium's back rooms and finds Q, wounded and lying on the floor. As Han tries to help, a woman appears, and he's forced into a brief skirmish. He eventually breaks away, realizing he can't afford to waste time, especially since the team's situation grows more dire. Just then, Jagal enters, chastising the woman and subtly asserting his dominance in the organization. In Mori's fight, he struggles against the relentless onslaught of clones. The clones overwhelm him, forcing him to break through the floor in a desperate attempt to escape. It's here he makes a horrifying discovery: the real Jeju team members, dead and discarded, confirming that his opponents are imposters who killed the Jeju fighters to take their place in the tournament. Mori quickly presses specific points on his body, numbing himself for the next hour to endure the brutal fight ahead. Meanwhile, Mira's opponent continues his relentless assault. She tries to fight back, but her attacks barely faze him, and he cruelly taunts her, insisting Mori will never return. Mira, enraged at the thought of Mori or Han being harmed, digs deep, finding strength she didn't know she had. But her opponent strikes with a crushing blow, sending her into unconsciousness. As she falls, Mira feels herself drifting into a subconscious state, hearing faint whispers of a powerful god. Memories of her cherished moments with Mori and Han surface, giving her a renewed sense of purpose. The god of war grants her its power, and Mira awakens, summoning the spirit of Lu Bu. Her sword returns to her hand, glowing with newfound strength. The muscular man retaliates by summoning his Chariok, Hades, but Mira, bolstered by Lu Bu's power, easily overpowers him. With a decisive strike, she secures victory, and the announcer declares her the winner. Exhausted, she begins to collapse, but Mori appears just in time to catch her. Relieved, Mira smiles weakly as she sees him. The presenter announces the start of the next match, and while tending to Mira's injuries, Han expresses his pride in her for acquiring Chariot. However, he notices that Mori seems angrier than usual, an intensity unlike anything he's seen in him before. Mori then takes his place for the second match. His opponent, sensing Mori's dark mood, smugly asks how Mori managed to escape his clones. Without a word, Mori unleashes a devastating attack, using his Blue Dragon Kick, a powerful move of his own creation, not derived from any godly Chariot. As Mori's kicks strike with tremendous force, flashbacks reveal how he cleverly dismantled each clone with similar precision and power earlier, an impressive feat that stunned even his adversaries. In a flashback, we see Ilpio haunted by a painful memory in which Jagal had brutally injured his best friend, Seonyeon, by shattering her leg. At the hospital, Ilpio learned that while Seonyeon will eventually walk again, she will never be able to resume his martial arts training. Devastated and filled with rage, Ilpio tracked down Jagal and beat him severely, demanding that he apologize for ruining Seonjeon's dreams. But before he can get justice, the police arrived and arrested Ilpio. As he exited the police station, a stranger handed him a letter, an invitation to the God of High School tournament. After much thought, Ilpio decided to join, hoping that the prize money might help Seonyeon recover. In the present, Park Mujin explains to Jin Mori, Han, and Mira what happened with the fake Jeju team. He reveals that these imposters had infiltrated the tournament with the intent to eliminate them, but ultimately failed. Jin's team is still in the competition and will advance to the semifinals. Curious about the attackers' motives, Han asks who might be behind the scheme. Park discloses that the Nox organization is responsible, confirming their goal of sabotaging the tournament. Meanwhile, the clone user Mori, defeated earlier, is now badly injured, but Jagal arrives, casually asserting that while he isn't a Nox member, he's been cooperating with them for information. Before leaving, Jagal summons his giant shark, killing the injured clone user and declaring his intent to seize the key. The tournament continues, and Jin Mori's team is set to face Ilpio's team. Mira and Han notice Mori's unusual quietness, sensing something is troubling him. The first fight is between Han and Seonga, a determined girl from Ilpio's team. Seonga opens with a fierce assault on Han, but as he counters her moves, he recalls what Park had explained earlier. Nox's mission is to prevent people from accessing Chariok, the power of gods, forcing those who wield it to join their ranks. They had even kidnapped Jin's grandfather due to his power. Jin's team is determined to stand against Nox, but Park reminded them that they're still too weak. However, he promised them information on Nox if they win the tournament. Han lands a powerful punch on Seonga, sending her across the ring. Ilpio, seeing her struggle, urges her to stop, but she refuses. With fierce resolve, she declares that she'll keep fighting in honor of Sangyeon, who can no longer pursue her dreams of martial arts. With renewed determination, she charges at Han, but he ultimately overpowers her, securing a victory. After the fight, Han approaches Mori, who seems distant. He reminds Mori that they're a team and encourages him to stay focused so they can win the tournament together. Mira joins them, embracing them both and emphasizing the importance of unity. Mori, visibly moved, realizes that he's been too absorbed in his worries and regains his cheerful demeanor. Ilpio, watching from afar, senses a bittersweet pang as he observes their bond. Later, Seonyeon, still recovering, arrives to support his team. He thanks Ilpio for his loyalty, but advises him to fight for his own goals, including his desire to face Jin Mori. Motivated by Seonyeon's encouragement, Ilpio prepares to return to the ring, ready to give his all. Meanwhile, Nox's leader, Sang, unleashes his powers, disintegrating those who dare oppose him. His actions draw Park Mujin's attention, who arrives to confront Sang after a long absence. Sang acknowledges Park's reappearance, stating that he knows Park organized the tournament to uncover the key's location. He then conjures a potent spell, projecting a glowing symbol in the sky that opens a massive portal. From the portal descends an enormous sword, the same one that once threatened Mori's grandfather. As the tournament progresses, the much-anticipated battle between Jin Mori and Ilpio is about to begin. When the match starts, Ilpio tells Mori that his current Taekwondo skills aren't enough to defeat him. He points out 3 critical flaws in Mori's technique, which are struggling with close-range combat, calling out his moves, and using techniques that exhaust his own body. Ilpio then lands several blows on Mori, who finds himself unable to counter. He taunts him, suggesting that his grandfather would be disappointed to see him in such a weakened state. Desperate to regain control, Mori recalls some moves he learned from his friends. To everyone's surprise, he uses Mira's Moonlight Sword style, effectively landing a hit on Ilpio. He follows this with Han's Black Tortoise technique, showing that he's adapting to the weaknesses Ilpio pointed out. Back at the portal, a godlike figure emerges, placing immense pressure on the colossal sword. Sang hopes this entity will pass judgment on the tournament's organizers. Park Mujin quickly summons a cross-shaped shield, blocking the sword's descent and preventing it from devastating the city. Then, another figure appears, a man in a hat, accompanied by drummers, who chants invocations that summon a second portal. Through this new portal, ethereal hands emerge, seizing the sword as another of the 6 powerful beings is summoned. As tensions rise, Nox members clash with tournament organizers in the city streets. Park strains to maintain the cross-shaped barrier, but a monstrous creature emerges from the second portal, biting down on the giant sword and shattering it. The organizers cheer in relief, celebrating their unexpected victory against Nox's assault. Returning to the intense duel between Jinmori and Ilpio, it's clear both fighters are unleashing everything they have. Ilpio's movements suggest that he's been guiding Mori throughout the battle, helping him learn from his mistakes in real time. A flashback reveals a meeting between Jin Taijin and Ilpio years earlier at a martial arts academy, and Taijin had asked Ilpio to teach his grandson a few lessons if they ever met in battle. Honoring this request, Ilpio has been providing Mori with invaluable insights. As the match reaches its peak, Ilpio falls to the ground, defeated but satisfied. He feels a sense of fulfillment, knowing he has kept his promise to Taijin by helping Mori grow stronger, but as he lies on the ground, Ilpio slips into a trance-like state, encountering a mysterious, white-tailed fox in his mind. With unwavering resolve, he declares that he cannot afford to lose yet. To everyone's astonishment, he stands up, undergoing a dramatic transformation. His hair turns white, his eyes glow with a fierce yellow, and 9 flaming tails appear behind him. The power radiating from Ilpio stuns the entire arena, including Park and Sang, who realize they are witnessing something extraordinary. Smiling darkly, Sang proclaims that the key has finally revealed itself. An ancient myth then tells of a powerful 9-tailed fox spirit residing in heaven, its strength unmatched. After 1,000 years of rigorous training, the fox became the guardian of the god who ruled heaven, repelling countless threats. However, as the fox's power grew, the god grew fearful, eventually ordering the fox's execution. Enraged by this betrayal, the fox spirit used its immense power to devastate half of heaven before descending to earth, vowing revenge. Exhausted, it fell into a deep, vengeful sleep. In the present, Ilpio's transformation stuns everyone, especially Jinmori, who realizes Ilpio might embody the mythical power of the fox spirit. Jagal senses the powerful Cherry-Oak resonance, suspecting that Ilpio may be the key. Ilpio confidently declares that the real battle is just beginning. Mori tries to land a blow, but Ilpio is protected by an invisible barrier, and his counterattacks quickly drive Mori to the ground, unsure of how to handle this new level of strength. Mira and Han watch in awe, captivated by Mori's fierce determination to stand his ground. During the fight, Ilpio signals to his head, and Mori realizes that true Cherry-Oak mastery requires more than physical strength. It demands unity of mind and body. With renewed resolve, he finds himself back on equal footing. Ilpio summons a fiery fox to attack, but as it nears Mori, it dissolves into nothing. The sky darkens, and Mori begins to radiate a brilliant light that reaches toward the heavens, astonishing Ilpio. A powerful energy emanates from him as he counters Ilpio's next move, the night parade of 100 demons, by creating a whirlwind that hurls Ilpio into the sky. From above, a colossal hand appears, striking Ilpio back into the ring and ending his transformation. With the battle concluded, the announcer declares Mori the victor, prompting thunderous cheers from the crowd. Mira and Han rush into the ring to embrace him, with Han asking if Mori had just tapped into his chariot. Mori, however, is as unsure as they are, surprised by the events that just transpired. In the stands, Sang watches intently, deeply unsettled by the outcome, and quietly leaves. Elsewhere, Mujin directs his team to secure the key and prepares to seek medical attention. Later, Mori visits Ilpyo in the hospital, and the two resume their playful debate over who's the stronger fighter. When left alone, Mori shares his concerns about his missing grandfather, explaining that the scarred man promised him information if he wins the tournament. Ilpyo, concerned for Mori's safety, warns him about Jigal's ruthlessness. He then affectionately pats Mori on the head, recalling the bond they share and their memories together. Meanwhile, Jean Jugok, recovering from Jigal's previous assault, is determined to continue fighting for his family's corporation. As he walks through a hospital corridor, he crosses paths with Jigal, and a brutal fight ensues. Jugok undergoes a monstrous transformation, absorbing people into his body as he rampages, capturing Ilpyo's friends. Despite his own injuries, Ilpyo tries to intervene, but is quickly overpowered. Jigal then attacks Jugok's monstrous form, successfully freeing one of Ilpyo's friends, but Jugok ensnares them again in his body tissue. As Ilpyo's friends try to reason with Jugok, Jigal summons his shark, dealing a fatal blow to the girl trapped inside, leaving her companion badly injured. Seeing his friends suffer, Ilpyo is filled with fury. He confronts Jigal, and their battle escalates, eventually leading them both to plunge from the building. Elsewhere, Sang, the leader of Nox, strolls through the city, announcing that he has finally found the key and releases a swarm of monstrous creatures into the sky. As this new threat emerges, Park decides it's time to end the God of High School tournament, realizing the escalating danger requires immediate action. As the chaos intensifies, a towering godlike figure emerges from the portal, its immense shadow casting an aura of awe and terror over Jin Mori, Mira, and Han. Sang, the Nox leader, watches with a twisted sense of satisfaction, proclaiming that this moment signifies both the beginning and the end of something profound. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jugok's grandfather, who is resolute in his quest for revenge over his grandson's tragic death, willing to sacrifice his own life if it means justice. We then glimpse Jigal's past, a brutal upbringing where he was torn from his mother and pushed to meet his family's harsh standards, destined to be a winner who would uphold their fortune. Back in the present, despite taking severe blows from Ilpyo in their fight, Jigal stubbornly rejects the idea of being a loser, a term his father had used against his mother. In the present, Jigal and Ilpyo are locked in a savage battle, unleashing their full Charyok powers. Ilpyo's anger blinds him, while Jigal, observing his opponent's uncontrolled fury, mocks him, likening Ilpyo to a wild animal. The tournament organizers find themselves battling flying monsters that have emerged from the portal, while Han, eager to earn money for each monster defeated, fights with renewed determination, aiming to pay off his debt. Park, watching from above, summons a massive protective shield over the city to prevent the god's descent from unleashing destruction. Sang, in a sinister reveal, announces his intention to erase every remnant of the world itself. Meanwhile, Ilpyo presses his assault on Jigal, but Jigal retaliates by summoning a monstrous creature that bites Ilpyo, forcing him back into his normal form. The key, once hidden within Ilpyo, hovers in the air, sparking a desperate struggle as various fighters try to seize it. Sang manages to grasp it momentarily, only for Mori to kick it away in confusion, unsure why everyone is vying for the strange object. As Park strains to uphold the shield, the situation escalates further. The U government, severing its alliance with Park, launches nuclear missiles aimed at the city, confident in their technology against the gods. Realizing the imminent threat, Park casts a spell, transporting the tournament participants to a remote mountain location to spare them from the destruction. However, Ilpyo sustains serious injuries in the process. Han uses his Charyok to heal Ilpyo's friends, while Sungyong explains that Ilpyo had foreseen great dangers threatening the city and was training Mori to help him face them. Ilpyo, regaining consciousness, urges Mori to protect the key, imploring him not to hand it over to anyone. Jigal reappears, demanding the key's whereabouts from Mira and Han. Refusing to answer, they suffer a vicious attack, leaving them severely injured. Later, Mori stumbles upon his friends, horrified by their condition, and Han urges him to run, recognizing Jigal's overwhelming power. Triumphant, Jigal declares, his intent to claim the key and everything else for himself. As the god from the portal shatters Park's shield, the elderly Jean Jason transports the city's residents to safety, seeking vengeance for his grandson's death. Jean Jason pierces through the missiles, unleashing his divine powers, which ignite an explosion that obliterates the god's shield and the monsters in the vicinity. Mori and Jigal, sensing the shockwave, race back to Seoul. Jean Jason collapses from exhaustion, while Sang emerges unscathed. Jigal, seizing the opportunity, ensnares Mori with a tentacle and takes the key, believing it will elevate him beyond even the gods. His body transforms into an angelic, monstrous form, and he declares his destiny to absorb all of existence, returning everything to nothingness. Park and the other organizers observe, struck by Jean Jason's sacrifice, uncertain of Sang's next move. Mori, Mira, and Han prepare to leave, but Jigal intercepts them, his newfound strength overwhelming. Injured by Jigal's relentless attacks, Mori, driven by anger over his friend's suffering, uses an acupuncture technique taught by the old man to exceed his physical limits. Empowered, Mori, Mira, and Han launch a coordinated assault on Jigal, who retaliates with bolts of lightning and summons giant monsters to crush them. Jigal, relishing in their struggle, hurls a spear-like energy attack at them. Han steps in, taking the hit to protect his friends, urging them to flee. Mori, unable to abandon his friends, unlocks a hidden power, and a massive staff descends from the heavens, shocking Sang, who recognizes Mori's true identity as Sun Wukong, the legendary Monkey King. Mori's headband transforms into a crown as he wields the staff, now imbued with the Monkey King's strength. Mori then strikes Jigal, shattering his summoned monsters with ease. Furious, he demands an apology for the harm Jigal inflicted on his friends, calling each by name in a personal vow of revenge. With a final, powerful strike, he sends Jigal crashing to the ground. Though battered, Jigal stands, defiantly rejecting the notion of defeat. Mori gathers storm clouds overhead, unleashing a barrage of lightning bolts that force Jigal back to his original form. Exhausted and defeated, Jigal collapses as Sang and his followers disappear. Mira and Han rush to Mori's side, relieved as he reverts to his familiar self. Yet Mori, struggling to remember the recent events, winces as his crown causes him intense pain. In desperation, Jigal rises once more, his face rapidly aging as he mutates into a grotesque, multi-limbed creature. Mori attempts to summon his powers again, but fails. Ilpyo arrives just in time, reminding Mori to trust his friends. The four prepare for a final showdown, exhilarated to fight as a team. Mori, summoning the power of the Blue Dragon, strikes Jigal with a devastating blow that obliterates his monstrous form. In his last moments, Jigal recalls a memory of his mother's farewell. Despite Ilpyo's outstretched hand, Jigal declines help, bidding him to live well before being consumed by his own summoned creature. Afterwards, Ilpyo catches fragments of the key as Jigal fades into oblivion. A mysterious woman then appears, introducing herself as one of the six and the progenitor of the human race. Declaring Mori's team the victors, she grants them a wish. Mori, wanting to save his grandfather, steps forward, but upon seeing his friend's injuries, realizes the gravity of their sacrifice. Setting aside his personal wish, he selflessly asks for everyone's bodies to be restored to their original uninjured state. The woman grants his wish, healing all who were hurt. She reassures Mori that his grandfather is alive, though his presence feels faint. Overjoyed, Mori's crown fades as he collapses in exhaustion. After a 3-month slumber, Mori awakens to find Mira and Han cooking in the kitchen. In a flashback, the wish-granting woman entrusts Ilpyo with gathering the scattered fragments of the key, hinting that it possesses the power to challenge and overthrow gods. Mori learns that to regain his lost memories, he must journey to Sun Wukong's homeland. Determined to grow stronger, Mori, Mira, and Han set off on this journey, vowing to find Mori's grandfather and face any destiny that awaits. In a final scene, Taejin remains imprisoned in a dark cell, missing an arm. Despite his suffering, he thinks of his grandson, believing wholeheartedly that Mori is destined to overcome gods and reshape fate itself. That's all for today's recap. For more thrilling stories and updates, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications on our latest content.